We got Biden ranked as worst president in modern history by voters in the Daily Mail poll. All right, so the Daily Mail, the people voted that Biden was the worst president ever in U.S. history ever, period, ever. So poor old man Biden is now viewed as the worst president, at least according to the people of the Daily Mail. Okay, so let's go and pull up this article here. American voters view Joe Biden. Now, it's not everyone, I think a fair portion, as the worst president in modern history, ranking him below controversial predecessors such as Jimmy Carter and I'm not a crook, Richard Nixon. Hey, you leave my tricky dick alone. No pun intended. According to a poll conducted by the Daily Mail, the survey asked registered voters to rank the last 9 U.S. presidents from best to worst. Biden was named as one of the worst 2 presidents by 44% of the respondents, with only 14% placed him among the top 2. This resulted in a net score of -30, worse than Richard Nixon's -25 and Donald Trump's -15. Say it ain't so. James Johnson, co-founder of JL Partners, the group that conducted the poll, described the results as diabolical for Biden. Oh, no. There's always a recent bias, and as Joe Biden is the incumbent, he starts off at a disadvantage there, Johnson said. But regardless of that, these numbers are worse than I expected. Oh, well, I thought Biden was so popular. Johnson attributed Biden's poor ranking to factors such as his age, his administration's handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal, the southern border crisis, and general voter dissatisfaction. I'd also factor in his economy, handling of the economy. And that's the position which he leaves office. From the man who beat Trump to the man who let him back in and who voters feel have been fundamentally a bad president. The poll also found that over half American voters disapproved of Biden's decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. The president's approval rating dropped to a historical low of 37% in the survey. In contrast, former President Ronald Reagan was ranked as the best president in modern history. Newsflash. Hey, come here. Sit down. We got to talk. That whole thing about Ronnie Boy, Ronald Wilson Reagan, he's the dude who kicked open that door for the neoliberal policies that we're living in here today. He's the guy that made the Democrats even go further corporatized. He's the guy that allowed good old Bush Sr. to come in. Bush Sr. then succeeded by one old horn dog Bill Clinton. Then there was Bush Jr. with his puppet master Cheney. You had Barack Obama and his buddy Biden. Then you had Trump. Then Biden and Trump again. No, it's not nothing really fundamentally changed. I mean, bailing out banks, helping out corporations, helping out Wall Street, bailing out Wall Street, politicians getting richer, more insider trading, money in politics, unending wars, infrastructure falling apart, and Americans getting broker and broker by the decade. Nothing fundamentally changed, except things getting fundamentally worse for all of us. But speaking of pardoning, hold on. We're going right back to Biden's pardons. Shout out to Case Study QB, who's wrongly being censored. I want to pull up this video here because now there's talk about another wave of pardons before old man Biden leaves office.
1 week after Joe Biden flip-flopped and decided to pardon his son Hunter, everyone, has presidential pardons on their Christmas wish lists now. NBC News reports Biden.
Speak for yourself. But if I had to get a pardon, it was Trey.
And is weighing preemptive pardons for people on Donald Trump's enemies lists, like Anthony Fauci, Senator-elect Adam Schiff, or former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Whatever one thinks about the prudence of preemptive pardons and the slippery slope that might cause, there are some people who Biden should strongly consider using his special power for. Native American activist Leonard Peltier, who has been in prison for almost 50 years and has long maintained his innocence in the killing of 2 FBI agents, has some powerful advocates calling on Biden to grant him clemency, including Senate Indian Affairs Committee Chair Brian Schatz of Hawaii, along with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Criminal justice advocates are pointing out that Biden currently has the lowest presidential pardon record of any president in modern history and are asking for clemency for people who are subject to unjustly aggressive prosecutions. But with the constant attacks on press freedom from the incoming administration, the rights of journalists and whistleblowers are clearly under threat. Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a Republican, and James McGovern of Massachusetts, a Democrat, have teamed up to urge President Biden to pardon WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
See, now the people they're calling to pardon, like that activist and Julian Assange, on paper, it sounds great, right? But I mean, my goodness, they shouldn't be arrested at all, period. They shouldn't be detained, period. And by the way, a pardon is also saying, hey, you're guilty, but we're going to let you go. So, in other words, I don't really see Biden or the establishment wasting any kind of pardon on any of these people, including one Julian Assange. I don't see Biden ever doing that. I mean, I just don't see it happening. I do not. I mean, I repeat again, I do not see that happening. But I see it happening for other politicians. People saying, no, Biden, I don't want a pardon. Please, Biden, give me a pardon.
As they worry his plea deal sets a dangerous precedent for prosecuting journalists and whistleblowers with espionage offenses. Joining us now is Gabriel Shipton, the brother of Julian Assange. Gabriel, it's great to have you back on the show. Before we get to the push for a pardon for your brother, are you surprised that the Biden administration decided to make the plea deal initially, as Vice President Biden referred to him, to Julian, of course, as a high-tech terrorist?
Yeah, well, that was a very long time ago. I mean, that was back.
I would not forgive him. After everything, never mind. You know what? I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. But after everything that Assange went through, him and his family, his friends, his co-workers, unforgivable. And look, to be clear here, all this started with Barack Obama going after him. Donald Trump kicked open that door. No, better yet, he blew open that door. And by proxy, also helped usher in that wave of censorship that we're kind of dealing with now. Brilliant move. Whoever advised that to Trump. Hey, go ahead, kick him out of the Ecuadorian embassy. Go ahead and get him. Dumb decision. And of course, hey, Biden's still continuing on with it to this very day. I'm glad he's safe and home, but none of this needed to happen. And surprise, surprise, Democratic and Republican politicians can agree on something. Silence the free press.
Back in 2010. So, but this was always a Trump administration prosecution. And during the Biden administration, when
Biden was also going after him too. He didn't have to do it.
And the publisher of the New York Times, for example, wrote to the president asking him to drop the charges against Julian. The rhetoric coming from the administration was always, we cannot interfere in an ongoing DOJ process. It was always going back to that separation of powers. So they never really pushed that hard, this prosecution. It sort of just played itself out, ending up in this plea deal where Julian was freed and returned home to Australia. But now that DOJ process is over, it is an opportunity for the president, for the Biden administration, to acknowledge those calls from people like the publisher of the New York Times, as well as press freedom groups all around the United States, over 26, who'd written to the Biden administration multiple times calling on him to drop this prosecution because of the threat that it meant to publishers. So now it's the president's chance to really stand up for the rhetoric that he's used before, saying journalism is not a crime, and unwind this horrible prosecutorial pathway that could potentially be used against publishers, against journalists who are publishing classified information in the future.
Let me ask you if you were surprised that Donald Trump didn't pardon him during his first term. I mean, many critics of both Trump and of WikiLeaks blamed the Clinton email leaks for her loss in 2016.
Not true at all. The reason why Clinton lost is because she was a terrible candidate. Nobody liked her. Okay? Hey, liberals, pink pussy hat people, come to terms with it. Nobody was a fan of Hillary Clinton. Nobody liked her. She lost because she ran a terrible campaign. What? I'm with her? Oh, yeah, let's go ahead. It's her turn. No, I don't think so.
And figured that Trump may want to return the favor. Were you surprised at the position that Donald Trump took, or you have any optimism that when he becomes president, he may pardon him?
Yeah, look, there are some new elements in this Trump 2 administration that I think have been calling for a pardon for Julian Assange, such as RFK Jr. He made it part of his campaign during his presidential run to call for a pardon for Julian. But I think really now it's up to the president. There's that ticking clock, and it's pardon season in the United States, in your country, and he has that opportunity now to really wind back this horrible deal, this horrible plea deal that Julian was made to plead guilty of, that criminalizes every step of the investigative journalism pathway, communicating with a source, publishing classified information, possessing classified information. It's the bread and butter of investigative journalists that has been made illegal through this deal. And it was, let's not forget, it did emanate from the Trump administration. So he had an opportunity to pardon Julian. He didn't do it. Now I think it's up to President Biden.
You were talking about the precedents that sets his plea deal sets. What's the case that you would make to the American public as to why the plea deal is so dangerous and the only way to correct it is through a presidential pardon by Biden?
Well, this sets up the precedent that journalists
here's the danger, okay? Since Assange's arrest, we have seen a massive wave of censorship. We have seen a massive wave of suppression. We have seen people being silenced, removed, deplatformed. We've been seeing people lose their livelihoods. We've seen people go behind bars. We've seen what happened to whistleblowers and journalists. We have seen how it cost them their very own lives. We saw how it's devastated people who spoke truth to power. And what was their reward? Oh, they were arrested. They were put behind bars. They were vilified. They were the bad guy. And corporate media going along with it, including people at BSDNC and CNN. Where are all of you? Oh, that's right. You had to be careful what you said because the powers that be wouldn't give you the script to say, oh, hey, what's happening to Julian Assange is pretty bad indeed. But they were never going to fall out of line. They had to follow the orders. But these pardons now for people who do deserve it, I mean, the problem is that they're not going to get it because they don't play ball with the Democratic establishment. Biden's going to only help out his political friends and donors and those that have benefited him personally. That's the name of the game.
Can be investigated for doing their jobs, that for bringing information to the public, bringing classified government secrets to the public, which is what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to tell us about the truth about what governments are doing in our name. Can be investigated and can be prosecuted under this precedent. So I think journalism is such an important pillar of all our democracies, particularly the American democracy, that it can't be under threat like this. And when we're going into an administration that people don't really know what's going to happen, I think.
Okay, but here's the thing. Everyone has a right to, have their own fears and concerns. And yes, there's a lot of questions to be concerned about a Trump administration. But, under the Biden-Harris administration, have people forgotten the jackboot of censorship? I mean, all times Heartland's Media's gotten hit and all of our colleagues gotten hit, it's been happening under this 4 years. These 4 years. No wonder. Look, in my personal opinion, for Biden being president, yeah, terrible president, senile, old, decrepit, surrounding himself with yes men and puppeteers, not able to help out the American people, turning a blind eye to us as natural and man-made disasters impacted communities and livelihoods and people's lives. And yes, unending wars and helping out the corporations in the top 1%. My goodness, how are people surprised that he was, at least in a Daily Mail poll, that he was viewed as a terrible president? And that's how Biden's going to be remembered. How? But hey, he saved his son. He saved his son, right?
Journalism is more important than ever to really holding government to account.
All right, Gabriel Shipton, thank you so much for your time. We'll continue to follow this story, and please update us, as always, if there are any new developments, and certainly hope the president does make that pardon.
Which, hey, folks, let's have democracy in the chat. Do you think that Biden's going to do that for somebody like that, like Julian Assange or anybody else that was an activist, a journalist, a whistleblower? Type 1 for yes, kid, he will, because he has a heart. Type 2, man, he's not going to do that. And even if he was told to do it, he's going to forget about it. Come on, that's a silly question. The answer is no. That's not going to happen.